The heavy, metallic door clangs shut with a foreboding resonance, as if severing ties with a familiar existence and locking away cherished memories. However, this is not the infamous Russian pretrial detention center, with its overcrowded cells, suffocating atmosphere, and stagnant air thick with despair. Instead, it's a German prison, a correctional facility where even the barbed wire fences possess an immaculate, precise arrangement, appearing as though meticulously aligned with a ruler, mirroring the renowned German meticulousness and order that permeates every facet of the nation. How do individuals hailing from Russia, people nurtured within entirely distinct cultural traditions, fare in this environment? What does a Russian person experience upon finding themselves behind bars, far from their homeland, within a country whose customs, language, laws, and mentality might be completely unfamiliar, alien, and incomprehensible? How do they acclimate to a new reality where everything operates according to divergent principles and regulations? The distinctive characteristics of the German penal system: an initial jolt, a wave of culture shock, and a profound re-evaluation of values. The primary aspect that immediately captures attention and astounds the imagination of Russian-speaking inmates arriving in Germany for the first time is the very framework of the correctional system, encompassing its structure, guiding principles, and overall approach. Unlike numerous other penal systems, the German model is firmly rooted in the principle of resocialization, diverging from the notion of blind retribution, severe punishment, and the crushing of individual spirit. The paramount objective that German prison authorities set for themselves is to reintegrate the errant individual back into society not as a broken, demoralized, and embittered figure, but rather as someone who has reformed, acknowledged their transgressions, and is prepared to lead a fresh, law-abiding existence. In stark contrast to Russian correctional facilities, colonies, and prisons, where convicts often reside in communal barracks, cramped, overcrowded spaces, sometimes housing 100 individuals or more. Deprived of personal space and solitude, German prisons primarily feature single-occupancy cells, affording each inmate a degree of privacy and comfort. A typical cell in a German prison constitutes a compact yet functional space of approximately 8 to 10 square meters, complete with a private bathroom, which is a significant advantage in terms of hygiene and convenience, a bed, a desk for work and meals, and a closet for storing personal belongings. By Russian standards, where living conditions frequently leave much to be desired, this is akin to a luxury suite, an unattainable aspiration for many prisoners. One former inmate, Mikhail, name altered to preserve anonymity, who served time in the renowned Tegel prison in Berlin, recounted with astonishment, "When I was escorted to my cell, I was utterly bewildered and presumed that some terrible error, a misunderstanding, had occurred. I anticipated seeing somber bars on the windows, crude, hastily assembled bunks, a filthy latrine situated directly in the corner. Instead, I found a reasonably presentable room, almost like a typical student dormitory, clean and comfortable. The language barrier, a fundamental test of resilience, a gateway to isolation and misunderstanding. Despite the relatively acceptable and even comfortable material conditions encountered by inmates in German prisons, Russian prisoners in Germany grapple with a formidable and at times insurmountable challenge: unfamiliarity with the German language, which serves as the key to comprehending the surrounding world and interacting with others. All instructions, internal regulations, administrative directives, informational bulletins, and even the cafeteria menu are presented exclusively in German, creating immense difficulties for those who lack sufficient proficiency. Professional translation services are generally provided only during the preliminary investigation and court proceedings, but not during the daily routine of prison life, when inmates need to understand what is expected of them and how they should conduct themselves. During my initial months in prison, I barely communicated with anyone, and I felt utterly isolated, recalls Alexei, who served a 3-year sentence in the infamous Stadelheim prison in Munich for financial offenses. It felt as though I had landed on an entirely different planet, where people spoke an incomprehensible language and abided by different laws. I didn't understand what the guards wanted from me, and I couldn't decipher the internal regulations to avoid violating them. It was even more frightening and agonizing than the physical isolation itself, the separation from my family and loved ones. Inmates who possess proficiency in the English language find themselves in a slightly more advantageous position, as some German prison staff members, particularly younger individuals, possess sufficient English language skills to communicate with inmates. However, for many of our compatriots who lack proficiency in both German and English, the initial months of incarceration transform into a genuine ordeal marked by alienation, loneliness, and a complete lack of comprehension regarding the events unfolding around them. The Russian diaspora behind bars, mutual assistance and support, or the emergence of new problems, conflicts, and criminal schemes. Within the confines of larger German prisons situated in major cities such as Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, and others, small yet cohesive Russian-speaking communities have gradually formed, comprising individuals hailing from various countries of the former Soviet Union: Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Kazakhs, Moldovans, Armenians behind bars, far from their homelands. The post-Soviet realm seems to reunite, blurring political boundaries and setting aside past disagreements in the face of shared hardships and challenges. We endeavor to stick together, assist one another whenever possible, and provide support during difficult times, explains Victor, a former inmate from Hamburg who served time for theft. We offer each other assistance with the translation of documents, letters, and explanations with the administration. We share packages from home, food, and cigarettes, and we elucidate the prison rules of conduct to newcomers to prevent them from making mistakes and incurring trouble. Occasionally, the German administration even expresses disapproval regarding this, considering us an excessively insular and detached group that is unwilling to integrate into the broader prison environment. Nevertheless, this phenomenon also possesses a negative aspect, an undesirable consequence. Alongside mutual aid and support, elements of the prison subculture imported from countries of the former USSR, complete with its distinctive notions, unwritten codes, hierarchy, and criminal traditions, infiltrate the prisons. Concepts, the thieves' code, caste divisions, and the pursuit of dominance are all endeavors introduced into German prisons by individuals originating from the criminal underworld. The German administration very rigorously and firmly suppresses any attempts to establish an internal hierarchy among the inmates or to combat this phenomenon, recounts an employee of a human rights organization specializing in working with inmates in Germany. As soon as they notice someone attempting to establish their own rules, exerting pressure on other inmates, or extorting money or possessions, that individual is immediately isolated from the others and placed in solitary confinement to thwart their criminal activities. The daily routine, precision and strictness, German order and discipline, German punctuality and organization, renowned throughout the world, are fully evident within the prison system, where everything is subject to a strict daily schedule meticulously planned down to the minute. An inmate's day is meticulously planned, and for Russians, who are accustomed to a more informal and flexible attitude toward time, spontaneity, and improvisation, this proves challenging and necessitates a degree of adaptation and effort. Wake up precisely at 6 in the morning upon the ringing of the bell. Breakfast from 6:30 to 7. Work or study from 7:30 to 3:30 with a mandatory lunch break. Evening activities such as watching television, reading books, or engaging in sports until 8 in the evening, and lights out at 10 in the evening. Any violation, even a minor one, of the established daily routine can result in disciplinary sanctions, ranging from the deprivation of certain privileges, such as visits or purchases from the prison store, to placement in solitary confinement, which constitutes a severe punishment. For me, the most challenging aspect was adapting to this German order, becoming accustomed to the rigid schedule, and adhering to all the rules, recalls Igor, who served time in a German prison for an economic offense related to fraud. In a Russian colony, there is also a regimen, but there it is always possible to find common ground with the administration, negotiate something, slightly relax the rules, and turn a blind eye to minor infractions. Germans, however, are like programmed robots, operating strictly according to instructions. If it is written wake up at 6, then at 5:59 you can still sleep soundly, but at 6:01 you are obligated to stand beside your bed and make it, or else you will receive a reprimand. Employment and education, an opportunity for parole and a chance to begin a new life. Unlike Russia, where the labor of inmates is often exploited for production purposes, generating profits for the state or private companies in exchange for meager, symbolic compensation in Germany. Work and education are primarily viewed as vital instruments of resocialization, assisting inmates in reintegrating into society as full-fledged members. Inmates in Germany are guaranteed the right to education and vocational training and are obligated to work if they are physically and mentally capable, provided there are no medical contraindications. For their work, they receive a reasonably decent wage, which ranges from 9 to 16 euros per day, depending on the complexity of the work performed, qualifications, and hours worked. A portion of the funds earned can be used to purchase necessary items from the prison store, such as food, cigarettes, and toiletries, while the remaining portion is deposited into a special account that they can utilize after their release to adjust to life on the outside. For Russian inmates, this system possesses both advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons. On the one hand, the wage appears laughable and insignificant compared to what can be earned on the outside engaging in skilled labor. On the other hand, active participation in employment and educational programs, along with attending refresher courses, significantly increases the chances of parole, which serves as a potent incentive for reform and altering one's lifestyle. I obtained a welding specialty right in prison, completed the training, and passed the exams, says Andre from Nuremberg, who served time for drug trafficking. Initially, I thought that this was entirely unnecessary for me, that I had no need for a welding profession. But then I realized that if you want to get out earlier, you need to demonstrate to the administration that you are sincerely changing, embarking on the path of reform, and preparing for a normal, law-abiding life. After my release, this profession sustains me, enabling me to earn a living through honest labor, medical care and nutrition, unexpected comfort and concern for inmate health. Medical care in German prisons is maintained at a reasonably high standard, consistent with the standards of ordinary urban clinics and hospitals. Inmates have the opportunity to regularly consult with qualified therapists, dentists, and psychologists, and, when necessary, with specialists such as cardiologists, neurologists, surgeons, and others. For many Russian inmates who are accustomed to a shortage of medical services and poor quality of care, this comes as a pleasant surprise, a genuine revelation. I had serious dental problems even before my arrest, but in Russia, I couldn't afford normal, quality treatment due to a lack of funds, recounts Dmitry, a former inmate who served time for car theft. In the German prison, I received complete treatment, all my teeth were treated, and several modern implants were placed, and all of this was completely free at the expense of the state. On the outside, this would have cost me several thousand euros, an insurmountable sum. Nutrition in German prisons also differs significantly from its Russian counterpart in a favorable direction, both in terms of quality and variety. Inmates are provided with 3 meals a day, taking into account the religious and dietary needs of each individual. There is the option to order a vegetarian or vegan menu, which is an expression of respect for personal beliefs. However, Russian inmates often express dissatisfaction regarding the blandness and monotony of prison food, which they find tasteless and unappetizing. German cuisine, with its abundance of boiled vegetables and unsalted dishes, does not align with their taste preferences. Many resort to making purchases from the prison store, where they can acquire additional food products such as sausage, cheese, canned goods, sweets, and beverages to diversify their diet. Contacts with the outside world, strictly regulated but supported. Maintaining contact with family and friends is a crucial factor in preserving the psychological well-being of inmates. Therefore, in Germany, a certain degree of attention is devoted to this, albeit strictly controlled by the prison administration. Inmates have the right to telephone conversations with relatives and friends. However, their duration and frequency are strictly limited to avoid disrupting the institution's routine and creating interference for other inmates. Calls to Russia are quite expensive and are not accessible to all inmates, particularly those who lack financial support from relatives. Visits from relatives are also regulated and conducted under the strict supervision of guards. Typically, this amounts to 1 to 2 hours per month, depending on the inmate's conduct and the prison's rules. For Russian inmates whose families reside thousands of kilometers away, in another country, this is particularly difficult and painful, as not every relative has the means to fly from Russia to Germany for a short meeting due to financial difficulties or problems with obtaining a visa. The most difficult thing is not seeing how your children grow, how they change and develop, shares Sergei from Cologne, who is serving time for an economic offense. My wife sends photos by email, but it's not the same. It doesn't replace live communication. During the 3 years that I spent in prison, my daughter grew up and changed significantly, and I missed all of that time I wasn't there for her during important moments in her life. Integration after release, new prospects and opportunities, or new problems and challenges. After serving their sentences, former inmates face the question of what to do next, how to build their lives after release, and how to adapt to new realities. Here, the fates of Russians in Germany diverge, unfolding according to different scenarios. Those who have a residence permit in Germany are provided with comprehensive assistance in reintegrating into society. Social support is provided, housing is offered in temporary, transitional homes, and assistance is provided in finding employment and obtaining vocational education. Those who have learned the German language and acquired a sought-after profession during their time in prison have a good chance of starting a new life with a clean slate and finding their place in society. Regarding illegal migrants who lack legal grounds to remain in the country and those who have committed serious crimes, the procedure of deportation, expulsion from the country, is often applied. After their release from prison, they are sent to special centers for deportees and then forcibly expelled from the country. Paradoxically, some inmates fear release even more than imprisonment itself, notes a social worker from Berlin who assists former inmates. In prison, they had a roof over their heads, guaranteed food, medical care, and social security. But what awaits them after deportation to Russia with a criminal record and a tarnished reputation? This uncertainty, the unknown future, frightens them far more than the prison walls. In conclusion, two worlds, two systems, two different approaches to punishment and correction. The Russian and German penal systems represent two entirely different worlds, with different philosophies, different goals and objectives, and different approaches to punishing and correcting criminals. While the Russian system largely retains a punitive character, focusing on severe punishment and isolation from society, the German system is more oriented toward resocialization, toward returning a person to society as a full-fledged, law-abiding member capable of contributing to the well-being of society. For Russians who find themselves in German prisons, this becomes a genuine culture shock, an encounter with a completely different reality. Comfortable material living conditions are combined with strict discipline and regulation, along with German order. The language barrier exacerbates isolation and hinders communication. But at the same time, new opportunities arise for obtaining education, vocational training, and improving one's life. Many of those who have gone through the German correctional system and returned to Russia acknowledge that, despite all the hardships and deprivations, it was a valuable experience that taught them a great deal and helped them to reevaluate their lives. I saw with my own eyes how a system can function if its goal is truly to rehabilitate a person and assist them in returning to a normal life rather than simply retribution and punishment for a crime committed. Summarizes a former inmate who served time in a German prison. And most importantly, I realized that prison doesn't necessarily have to break a person, but it can give them a chance to change their life and start over with a clean slate. Unfortunately, Russia is still very far from this understanding in our country. Prison remains a place where destinies are broken.